Okay, so what's going on, guys? I am back again. I apologise to my last two guests. I had a huge mental block on getting those two episodes out, and I just could not face doing loads of editing. So I decided to cut the intro, just get the episodes out, and it has worked. It's got me back in the flow, got me back in the mindset to do more of these episodes. I love doing it. But I want to start this podcast with a plea to any of my listeners or watchers. I started this podcast in May 2020 as a lockdown project, and since then I've done 40, this is the 48th episode. This has all been from my motivation. It's a motivation to deepen my knowledge as a coach, to try and connect coaches together and people together, to bring about a spotlight on people that don't often get the spotlight, who I think deserve it and have something to say. And hopefully for students as well, or practitioners of parkour who want to get better and want to know what works. So the reason I'm telling you this is because I've done all of this off my own back. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, but it's got to a point where I need your help. And really, I want to make this a plea for a sponsorship on my podcast. If you are a parkour organisation that would like some advertisement, that would like me to promote what you do, what you're about, your clothes, your events, your competitions, then let's talk. I wanted to explain a few stats about my podcast and be transparent so that you may be interested. So since I started Parkour Coach Companion, I've had over 7,000 starts on my podcast, over 5,000 streams. I've had over 1,000 separate listeners, and I currently have over 300 followers. This podcast has been listened to in 53 countries. Still blows my mind, but it's amazing the power of Spotify, the power of the internet in being able to broadcast to such a global audience. This podcast was also nominated for the UK Coaching Awards 2022 in the category of Coaching Podcast of the Year, and I managed to get to the top 3. I didn't win, but I was amazed to get there, and I was super grateful for Parkour UK for nominating me. So I need some help to keep these podcasts going. I want to keep them going. I want to keep bringing you excellent content from the best, but I need your help. So if you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, interested in working together, now's the time. Message me on Instagram at Sam Coppack or at PK Coach Companion. We can talk about it and see what goes from there. And I really hope that doing this we can help each other. I can help promote your brand, your organisation, your event, and you can help me keep bringing these educational podcasts to the forefront of the parkour scene. So there you go, you can hear the music rolling back in, and that only means one thing. We've got the classics coming back. Every episode I want to showcase a classic parkour video from the archives, taking the music from it just to scintillate those nostalgic feelings. This one comes from Konstanin Kachurin. It's Touch the World 2. Came out in September 2011, and this one it's always stayed with me. It's one of the best barefoot parkour videos ever made. The guy's wearing a freaking curtain. It's one of the most baggy videos you'll ever see. It's all in black and white. It's interspersed with these beautiful sections of him in this prayer-like fashion, painting these, what looks like Chinese characters, to reveal a message at the end. Man, I often feel that parkour these days is losing its sense of emotion or spirituality, and that's somehow wrong or cringe, but fuck that, man. This guy is it stayed with me. This video is so pleasant and aesthetic to watch. He's really put time into it. The filming is great, the low angles with the fish, the movement is great, all on concrete, barefoot, doesn't give a fuck. The guy looks like a monk, he looks like a prophet. And To be honest, I love that some people take parkour in this direction. I always have loved it. You know, we're people with a body, we're experiencing these amazing things, and it's gonna produce feelings of meaning, of movement, of emotion. It's okay to show that. It really is. It's great to show that. So I don't think this is cringy at all. I think it's a wonderful video. And it leads me on to our guest for today, who is also another barefoot master. I've been following this guy for a while now. His movement really caught my eye back in the day, and he has only gone from strength to strength. We of course talked about his more recent switch to barefoot training, but we also talked about the misconceptions behind this. We looked at the difference between living in Hong Kong and Hawaii and how that's affected his training. And we also touched on things like his religious stance, dream collaborations, a Parkour Essentials Kit, speed competitions, and ape indexes. So lock in, listen in. This is episode 48 of Parkour Coach Companion with the one and only Matt Jang.
Hello.
Yo, what's going on,
How's
man?
it going? Good evening to you in the UK.
Yeah, it's 7:30 here, so just finished work, just finished some classes.
Nice. What part of the UK do you reside?
I'm in the northeast of England, so my city is called York.
Okay, yeah, I've been there.
Oh, really?
I have been there, yeah.
Damn, when did you come to York?
That was in 2019.
Really? Fuck, where was I? What happened?
I was with Daniel Ilibaka and a group of guys. We were partnering with a stage performance. They're called Justice in Motion. They highlight issues of human trafficking. So
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
good
That's
times.
cool.
I loved it. I loved York. It was
Yeah?
amazing place. Yeah.
Oh, it's a lovely place. It's got a lot of history. It's very quiet. Very quaint. It's very pretty. Very safe. It's a cool place. It's a good place. There's some good jumps as well.
I love the presence of castle walls and
Yeah.
throughout the city, and yeah, the old houses and stuff.
Yeah, man. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This is a really nice, I guess, transatlantic conversation. And I think we have there's a lot to learn here, and I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on a number of things. I've been following you for quite a while, actually.
Okay, appreciate it.
And always inspired by your movement. And I think a major point that we'll talk about is your transition to barefoot training. So
okay, yeah.
I knew you in the pre-barefoot days, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So
I did too. Yeah.
So the first thing, we'll start with something that's on your Instagram bio and something that kind of caught my eye.
Okay.
And we've already, before this podcast started, we already mentioned Daniel Ilibaka a little bit. You have a quote, "Be strong, courageous." And I wanted to just open this up to you and ask you: is parkour a kind of a vessel for this message? Is it a vessel for this sentiment and your relationship with, I guess, the Bible and God and kind of spirituality within parkour? I'm super curious because I was fascinated by Daniel Ilibaka's perspective on this and how he was one of the only people that said that parkour brought him closer to God. So the floor is yours. I would love to hear anything you have to say.
Yeah. That's a good question. I think. Oh man, where to begin? But
where to begin?
I think I think when I put that verse there, so that's Joshua 1:9. Obviously comes in the Bible. be strong and courageous. I think that was very applicable to me within the season that I was in training, because we know parkour is the discipline of being strong to be useful, and in thinking about what it means to be strong, that has been a very guiding thought principle in my parkour career. I mean, parkour training lifetime, you start with the movement, you strengthen your movement. You're like, okay, I'm good at these things, I'm weak at these things. How can I make these things stronger? And then you start to venture into, I think once you start to venture outside of movement, like once you have a good feel of, okay, my movement is strong. I think for me, I started to venture out into other aspects of my life, what are some weaknesses in my life that I would like to strengthen? Maybe it's my relationships with my family. Maybe it's academics, because academics was definitely a weakness for me growing up. Maybe it's like parkour is very lower body specific. So I was like, okay, I need to strengthen my upper body because that's weak. And basically that statement, be strong, just from parkour, starting just from parkour, be strong to be useful, put me on this journey of self-improvement. And I think you get to a point where you realize that you can only get so far within this lifetime. Life is finite. We're human beings. We will never fully master ourselves. So it begs you to ask the question, okay, how is it then possible to become the strongest version of yourself? And I don't know if there's other questions later that will lead into this, but basically, I think a lot of people will dive into philosophy, will dive into religion to kind of figure out, okay, if we're limited to this lifetime and we're not able to become the strongest versions of ourselves within this lifetime, then what is the potential for something past this lifetime? What if there's an opportunity past this lifetime that we can continue to develop ourselves, develop our skills? And I think that was a thought that I was really trying to lean into, and now that I've been training for 15 years, it's started to make more sense to me. And so I grew up Christian, so I had this idea of eternity, but I wanted to know more. I wanted to dive into these other, the major 5 religions. So Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. There's the main 5 religions, and try to just get an idea of what eternity means, or what exists outside of death, to see, what kind of potential do we have to fully become the strongest, most self-actualized versions of ourselves. And so I went to a Muslim mosque, and I talked to imams are the prayer warriors that are in the steeples. They're calling people to prayer, and we talked to him about Islam, and I learned about that. And I went to a Hindu temple, and I went up into the attic, and there was a guru there, and he talked to me about Hinduism. And I went to some friends were with me on this journey, but I went to a synagogue and talked to a rabbi and learned about Judaism. I knew everything there was to know about Buddhism because I grew up in Hong Kong, and many Buddhists there, so I knew about that. And I had my own background in Christianity, so I knew that. To take it further, I took a world religion class in college, undergrad, and continued to learn more. And at the end of that course, I was like, okay, all of this is kind of out there. It's very abstract. It's very it's hard to wrap your head around these big ideas, these concepts, these theologies, these things. But what what stood out to me was the simplicity of Christianity, and this idea that essentially, and for those listeners, I want to be respectful to whatever you believe, and this is just like my understanding. Many religions, it's mankind's attempt to understand the eternal. It's exactly like the journey that I was on. It's mankind's attempt to understand the eternal. And you can live a life on earth trying to gain the best understanding of that, but at the end of the day, you will die, and then you don't know if you will like live forever in eternity, nirvana, heaven, hell, all those things. Again, I don't want to bash on any other religion, but take, for example, Hinduism, this idea of good and bad karma. And the idea is that you're born into this world and you have good and bad karma. It's already preset for you. And the goal is to break out of this cycle of birth and rebirth and death. The idea is that you're born with bad karma, and the goal in your lifetime is to have done enough good things to cover bad karma, so that you have the potential to be reborn into a higher caste, richer, more famous. And if you get so high, you can break that cycle of reincarnation and become one with the cosmos, the universe. But you're going to spend your entire life trying and working and striving to achieve this, but you just don't know. You're like, maybe I didn't cover up that one little lie I lied to my grandma, that she asked me if I ate the cookies and I said no, but I ate them all, something like that, something as silly as that. And from my understanding, every religion except for Christianity was like, it was striving to try to understand this, but there's still no certainty. The simplicity of Christianity is that we're given that certainty on earth so that we don't need to worry about that, so that we can actually focus on authentically becoming better, not because of we need to cover good karma or this or that. It's like, for listeners who don't know, Christianity, we believe in God. We believe that there's sin, and the sin was this void between man and God. And so there was a gap of misunderstanding. And so God, sent Jesus as a way for us to commune with God. And, after his death, we were left with the Holy Spirit. So we have a way to interact with what happens after death on earth now. So just think, like, as I'm learning this, I'm like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. Like, I think a lot of these other religions are on their way, like that. There's lots of truth to, the teachings, whatever, the theologies. But again, like, within this lifetime, we're not going to know. So Christianity, it's simple, it's simplified, if I can recall correctly, Danny has said this too, it is the most, just looking at it from an efficiency standpoint, Christianity is the most efficient way to bridge our lifetime to the eternal through Jesus.
Okay.
And we believe that when Jesus died, we're left with the Holy Spirit. So we have essentially the essence of God within us. And so we can live as close to how we would live after death on earth. And other religions, you don't really get that full picture. There are degrees to which you can interact with what happens after death. But I think Christianity gives you the fullest picture and efficient. So
okay.
That being said, so as I was making Christianity more of my own, I was like, we have this phrase, be strong to be useful. And in the Bible, it says, be strong and courageous many, many times. so many times. It's not just Joshua 1:9, many times. So I'm like, okay, I've used this principle, be strong to be useful, for so long, and now I have this other piece of my faith. Let's put those together. That already exists, like, I thought, like, wow, this is like amazing that this verse exists, because it's almost like I just take this piece from parkour and plug in and boom.
Okay.
And I feel like just being courageous adds on to the be strong, Why are we being strong? Like, strength requires courage. Strength requires just, all these different things. So, yeah, that is the very long-winded answer to your question.
Thank you. There's so many directions I would love to go with what you've just said, because I love talking about religion, spirituality, and its nature. There's so much to it. There's so much to explore, but we haven't got all the time in the world, so I have to be very careful about how we go forward. But I wanted to just kind of zone in a little bit on what you were saying about death, because and courage. Now, for people who are watching or listening, they will most likely know you for your predominantly barefoot parkour training, your ascents and descents in particular.
Yeah.
And clearly with ascents and descents, there is a high level of consequence. It could be death. And so can you try and explain how you feel approaching and navigating these challenges? Because I remember Danny saying something along the lines of, he trusts his own ability because God is kind of certain within him, or something, as in God is with him for everything he does, and that includes parkour, that includes doing a jump at this height or whatever, or this consequence. And so do you feel, in a sense, that you're being guided or protected by God in these situations where there's a very real consequence of death?
Yeah, good question. I want to answer yes and no, and mostly no, but just hear me out.
Sure.
Like, I know that the actions that I take are all done within the limits of what I am capable of, and that the training that I have put in creates a safety net for the things that I'm doing. I think when people see me doing Ascents and Descents, they just see someone, they think I wake up one day and I'm like, oh, let me go climb this thing, and I just go do it. No, they don't see the hours and hours of conditioning and strength training that I do to essentially create a bigger safety net. And so when I do these movements, of course, you have to have the assurance that it can be done safely and well. And I always have fallbacks, if I get tired at this point, is there going to be a way for me to stop and rest? If I'm mid-jump from second story to third story and I miss, will I be able to catch myself coming back down? Yes. And so everything that I do is all within my capability and my root system. But at the same time, it's like, who gave me that ability? God. So it's like, the answer is, do I feel like God is protecting me? Yes, but it's not like I'm going to recklessly do something and he will protect me because of my foolishness, It's because he's put this, this urgency to train in such a way that keeps me safe. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm like actually, figuring it out in my head as I speak. So it's
yeah. And there was one word there which, again, I'm going to zone in on, which was roots. Yeah. So I want to and excuse the pun, I want to branch this out into a couple of
Yep.
things.
Yep.
So the first thing I want to hear about your roots in where you've come from, and then we'll move on
Yeah.
to trees,
Okay.
which is
Yeah.
which for me as an observer, it seems to be a big part of your training and your life as well. So yeah, tell me the difference between Hong Kong and Hawaii.
Yeah. Yeah. They're the yin and yang, I tell you. They're the complete opposite. At least within the context of when I was there.
Yeah.
Hong Kong, obviously, everyone knows Hong Kong. It's a city. It's concrete. It's marble. It's steel, iron, glass. People everywhere. It's much like London or New York City. It's a metropolis, and growing up, I didn't really enjoy living there, and it felt like a cage. And like you walk out the streets, this is buildings caging you in, and there's like nowhere to go. And I don't know, for listeners who've been following me for a really long time, like bless your souls, I used to be For the Love of the City on YouTube, and the story behind that is Hong Kong was like a cage to me, but once I discovered parkour, it opened up, and the city was no longer a prison, it was a playground. And so parkour was my love for the city. So I do parkour for the love of the city. And at the time I was like, wow, I feel like this is a pretty neat and profound title that's very relevant to my stage of life, you know, finding once I started doing parkour, that was really the first time I loved the city, Hong Kong. Okay, so Hong Kong, concrete, steel, a cage. Hawaii, the complete opposite. Mountains, ocean, wide spaces, less people, not a cage, freedom. And so what my life looked like there was I describe it as moving home. I never felt like Hong Kong was, I never really felt like home. Now, like, it's funny because I just made a post on my story saying that Hong Kong will always be my first home. And it is to me now, but at the time, it didn't feel like home. When I moved to Hawaii, I was like, wow, I feel like I moved home. Like, the freedom that I have, the ability to go wherever I want, to use my body to navigate, to not feel trapped. And it really opened a whole new world to me. The friends that I made there were, you know, all adventurers. You know, we would run around. This ties into what comes later, but we would run around in the woods, shirtless, barefoot, and like on the cliff sides, we'd like run from the mountains and then drive to the sea and then cliff up into the ocean and all these different adventures. And so life just completely flipped. And another thing about moving to Hawaii is the lifestyle there is so much slower, and the people, I want to say this kindly, but people in Hawaii don't necessarily have a great understanding of what's going on in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And so when I moved there, you know, I would talk about, Hong Kong or other places I had been to in the world, because Hong Kong's very international, and no one would really have an understanding of what I'm saying. So I really had to discover a side of me that I hadn't really been able to develop. And that later ties into, you know, training barefoot and whatnot. Or should I just talk about it now? Or
Yeah, we could. I mean, yeah, it seems like you're going that way. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So again,
Well, it's specifically trees.
specifically trees. Okay.
Tell me about the trees, man.
Yeah. Well, again, let's see. Okay, I have to backtrack. So in Hong Kong, every once in a while, whenever I was in nature, I would feel the need to take off my shoes and run around just to feel the ground underneath me. But it's very rarely. When we go to the beach, I'd run around and my friends would, hey, where's Matt? Where's Matt? Like, oh, he's way over there. He's like on the cliff next to the sea. It looks like he's about to jump in. And that was what I did. Whenever I was in nature, I felt the need to take my shoes off to be immersed. Then I moved to Hawaii, and everyone does that. Like, I was like, wow, these are my people. They're all running in the woods, barefoot and shirtless and all this stuff, and climbing trees, and just really doing a lot of exploring. And I did climb trees, but it wasn't ever a thing where like I was trying to be efficient at it. I was trying to find paths in it. It was just climbing for the sake of it. So I would, on one side, I would be doing all this adventure related things, exploring. And then I would train parkour, which would just be in urban areas. So there were these two, I don't want to say activities, but two, like, it was urban. I would do parkour urban, and I would adventure in nature. And in my first, 10 years of parkour, I at least within the first 5, I would just watch guys from the UK, Urban Free Flow, Tim Sheaf, Danny, Blue, all those guys, and then everywhere else. And so I was like, I want to just train like they train. I want to look like they do. I want to move like they do. I want to train in those same places. And so, if you look back at my videos, baggy etres, the baggy shirt, the Kalengis, all that. And I would focus all my time and effort in developing a style that was similar to the people that I look up to. Gup was a huge one too.
Yeah, man.
And it wasn't until I would say COVID hit, and I had no job, couldn't work. But in Hawaii, we were allowed to exercise outside. We were always allowed to be in the ocean or outside exercising. And I was like, oh, okay, great. My life doesn't change that much then, because if I'm outside, I'm doing some form of activity. The only thing that was different was I was limited to who I could spend my time with. So I was hiking unmarked trails. I was surfing. I was doing calisthenics in areas that no one could see me, and also train parkour. But all my activities outside of parkour were more or less done barefoot. I'd like do, all these things barefoot, and then I'm like, okay, it's time to train parkour. And I would pull my shoes from underneath my seat in my car, because I barely used them at that point, and I'd put them on, and I'm like, okay, now it's time to train parkour. I put my shoes on. I'm like, okay, yeah, this just is how we do it. And I got to the point where it's like, I don't want to put my shoes on. I just want to, I've done my whole day barefoot. I might as well just train barefoot. And up until that point, I had been training. So in my 15 years of training, I've been training barefoot here and there the whole time. I had just never, I want to say, like, embraced trying to train barefoot more until COVID. And so I'm like, okay, I don't need my shoes. And I was getting very tired of doing parkour in Hawaii, just because it's a small island and you do everything that you can do on the spots. And so I was kind of bored, I was bored of, now I call it horizontal parkour. I was bored of doing horizontal parkour with shoes on. And so I think subconsciously my brain was looking for another level of excitement or another challenge. And so Barefoot brought that. I was like, wow, I can now do all the challenges that I had done before with shoes on, but now I try them barefoot, and it adds a whole nother element. I'm like, wow, I need to have the assurance of every single thing that I do, because if you mess up, you're going to hurt your feet. And I was doing that for a bit, and then what actually got me into ascents and descents, and then eventually trees, was I hurt my big toe on my left foot during a session where I was wearing shoes. And you know, that was I was rehabbing that for a while. So in the meantime, I was just surfing. I was like, okay, well, I can surf, so this is just what I'll do for a while until my foot feels better. And then as I was rehabbing my foot, I was like, you know, I don't think it's smart to like just put my shoes back on while rehabbing this. I think I should just like continue being barefoot and strengthen my feet that way. So I was running barefoot and doing all these things. And then when it came time for me to be like, oh, I think I want to start training parkour again, I realized I couldn't take any downward impact. So I was like, okay, what can I do? Like, oh, I guess I can climb. That's like zero impact. You're going up. And as long as I don't ever fall, I'll be fine. So that was the mindset I had. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to start looking for climbs. And, you know, I've already been watching, you know, Shane Parkour and Oliver Thorpe and
shout out.
Momo PK or something from the Netherlands. So I had seen those guys climbing, and of course Leo Urban, and it never occurred to me that that was something I was going to also do a lot of. But because I was limited to what my foot could do, I could only do climbs and I could not fall. So I would go to a spot and I would just look at what I was trying to do and visualize what I was trying to do. I would put my, you know, we all practice this as parkour practitioners, but I think I would do it to a greater extent. I would literally visualize myself doing it and being, okay, like these are parts where I can't fall because, you know, if I take the drop, I'm going to be injured again. So I just did climbs. And and then eventually I started filming what I was doing, and that kind of took off. And the trees thing came a bit later, because I was mainly training barefoot in urban areas doing climbs. Once my foot got better, I was like, okay, I can do other things. And I realized, you know, I've kind of like gained some sort of platform. People are watching. I've always tried to adapt myself to the parkour trends in the rest of the world. Like what do I feel like I can bring to the world? Like now that, you know, I have some sort of platform, you know, like, oh, you know, I have kind of been climbing trees and doing that, but like never for the purpose of doing it fast or finding lines or finding routes. So I got into a phase of, okay, let me try that. And at this point, Leo Urban was also really taking off with his stuff. Although I think the difference between Leo Urban and I is he goes super high. I would not, I mean, maybe eventually, but I wouldn't go as high as he does. And he will do like a, you know, tree bridging or a jump. I don't necessarily see him do like a lot of just lines. So sure. I think that's what set me apart from Leo. I just trying to find lines, trying to find efficient ways to move in and out of the trees And yeah, that's
Mm.
again, that's what you see.
Man, what I would give to see a video project of you, Leo, and Pedro Thomas. Oh my days.
Yeah, it'd be quite a thing, and it's interesting. I was looking at your list of questions, and I saw Pedro Thomas. I was like, wow, I haven't. It's crazy that I haven't thought of that guy for a long time, but yeah, definitely was a huge fan viewer of his stuff, and he's always been moving in trees, so that was a very good reminder. And I watched a bunch of his stuff last night just to recap. But yeah. Yeah, I think that would be really cool. I'm very curious to see how that would work, because I think though we all move in trees, I think we all move in trees very differently, so it would be very interesting.
Yeah, I just want to see that. Yeah, I'd love to have Leo on the podcast. Pedro is quite difficult to get hold of. He's I think he's a man unto himself. He's got his ways, and I respect that. But I would love to have Leo on, and I'd love to hear, if you did go and train with him, how it went for you and how he found it with you as well. And like you were saying, he does stuff really high, and
Yeah.
I don't think many people in the world are kind of doing tree jumps at his level, I would say.
Yeah.
At least sure. I haven't seen anyone. If there's anyone listening who's doing anything like Leo, then please, I want to see it, because it takes something to do things at height, with walls and with stable surfaces, but to do it with bark and barefoot, and yeah, it's fascinating to me. So yeah. I hope it happens. I hope you guys link up. That would be amazing.
Yeah, we have chatted back and forth over Instagram, just very, very briefly. He says, let's train. I'm like, yeah, let's train. Yeah, we'll make it happen. Like, I'll bring you to my forest. And I said, yeah, I'll bring you to my jungle. It's just very, very primal language. Just like, yeah. So I think, hopefully one day it will happen. But yeah, we'll see. He lots of respect for the man and what he's doing, and yeah, one day.
I can't wait. And speaking of collabs, something more recently that I really enjoyed seeing is your movement with Taylor. Taylor Carpenter. Is that right? Is that the second? Yeah.
Yes.
I guess it felt, I think I commented, like, it's just so wholesome to see, because, well, firstly, you guys look quite similar. You've got this flowing hair. She doesn't wear too many clothes when she's training as well, and I just love seeing you guys in the same shot. I love that. It was great. But another reason that kind of inspired me is because in my little studio where I teach parkour here in York, I have the parkour strength training book, which features Taylor on the front holding on to this kind of pole, and I've followed her and Ryan for nearly as long as I've been training. So it was really cool to see you guys linked up and training together. So tell me a bit about that, and I wonder if have you come across the book? Have you read any of it? Are you good friends with Ryan as well? Like, what's going on with that?
Yeah. I haven't read the book, but I am friends with Ryan, so it's I hope when he listens to this, if he does, that he can forgive me, or maybe he can just give me the book. But
let's hope so.
Ryan. The story is so Taylor and I are both from Hawaii. Well, most recently Hawaii. She was born and raised there. I was in Hong Kong and then moved there. And we would always train together. Our group of friends, we all trained together. And I was doing parkour and she did tricking. And For people who don't know, and I believe, yeah, she's fine with me saying this. She has pretty severe scoliosis, and though I knew she would be great at parkour, I didn't feel like it was gonna be good for her back, and so I never really pushed the subject or tried to have her come out and train. She ended up moving to Colorado for school and met Ryan, and they've been together and training since, and which is really funny because I'm on the outside, like at that point training how long has she been training parkour now? Wow. 4 years or so. But I had been training for 10 years, and now Taylor had gotten into parkour, and she was just blowing up, like blowing up. She had the best, maybe one of the world's best coaches, Ryan, and it was really cool to see that happen. And yeah, now we both have, following on social media, and obviously train together, and we've always talked about doing some lines together, but it's kind of hard to find a place where we can both do something. She either has to match my pace or I have to match her pace, just different things like that. So I've like done flips over her doing handstands before or flipped over her flipping, but that recent post of us doing that ascent together was really the first like parkour post, and I think people really loved it. It's interesting because exactly what you say, we look very similar style of movement as far as the ascents and descents. Yeah, so I'm actually going to, let's see, today is Friday. I'm going to see them tonight.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, we're going to train this weekend, so.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, please wish them well from me.
Yeah.
I've been following them for a long time. Again, I would love to have Ryan on the podcast. Mm-hmm. So you can pressure him to come on from me.
Yeah, I will for sure pass the word, especially after I've mentioned some things about him. He may want to come on and clarify some things, but yeah.
Well, has he? So you mentioned you regard him as one of the best coaches in the parkour world, and why do you think that is? Why do you think he's at that level? I kind of know why, because I've been following for a long time, but I think there's a lot of people that don't know who Ryan is because he's been around for so long, and he's put so much work into obviously writing, like the book, but also the tutorial videos, the strength work, the conditioning, and not so much about himself anymore, which I kind of is, at least from what I see. So from what you've experienced, why do you hold Ryan in such high regard?
That's it. All the questions are good, but that is a good question. Ryan's just been around for so long. It's funny because I always knew his name, but wasn't too familiar. Like all the people I was watching, they're from Europe. I actually didn't really fancy like the movement in America at all. So, and being at the time, being in Hong Kong, I wasn't living in Hawaii, which is part of the States. I just had no real interest in like knowing who people in the States, what they were doing. But Ryan has been training. He's one of the super OG guys in the States. He opened Apex Gym, one of the first parkour gyms in the States, like created the curriculum as far as I know, and has done a lot of things, as you mentioned, for the sport. And he is a quieter fellow, so I don't believe he likes to put himself out. That's probably why you don't see too much. But he's definitely been someone who's been behind the scenes for a long, long time. And he's coaching. He's coached a lot of high level athletes, and even in seeing, every once in a while I'll join him and Taylor in a training session, and it's like it's serious training. Like he does his research. He's currently helping Team Apex, train for World Chase Tag. And for those of you who've been following World Chase Tag, Apex has been dominating. And I think that a lot is hugely due to Ryan's research. And, he studies sprinting and mobility and being able to juke quickly. And I don't want to give the secrets away, but when the few sessions that I've had with him, it's like, wow, like, this is something that no one in the parkour community is really doing. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. I do see some people kind of like venturing into that, but like not at the level that he is having his athletes train at. And I think that if anyone is looking to improve their skills, like, just gonna plug him. Like, Ryan's the guy. Like, he knows his stuff. So,
and do you feel like you need a coach?
Do I feel like I need a coach? I think the quick answer is no. Do I think anyone could use a coach? Yes. Do I think I would benefit from having a coach? Yes. Am I in a place where I want coaching? I don't really feel like I do. So I think the quick answer is no. Like, I'm at this point, I've done everything that I've wanted to do, like, within parkour after having done it for 15 years. And I'm just training for more or less fun, for the enjoyment of it, for the journey. And I don't, of course there are moments where I want to push certain things, but I don't put any, I don't lay any things in concrete, just kind of moving, flowing as I go and enjoying the process.
Cool. And you're not a competitive athlete?
I would say so. I'm actually training to be in my first speed comp.
Yes, let's go.
but by nature, I'm not a competitive athlete, and
sure. Yeah.
I'm only doing this one because the guys running it really want me to, and they're willing to fly me out and
cool.
help accommodate me. And I straight up said, hey, if I go, I'm not gonna go to win. I'm gonna try my best, but the goal is not to win. The goal is just to have a fun experience and get to train. And but at the same time, there is something that I like about having some sort of goal to work towards. And so that is coming up at the end of this month, so I'll see how.
Which competition is it?
This is the USA Parkour Cup, and it's just the qualification. So if you make it in the qualifier, you obviously make it to the finals and whatnot.
Nice. Well, good luck. I'll be very. The reason I was so excited is because the thought of you doing a speed competition, I think, makes a lot of sense. I think that something that draws me to a lot of practitioners is speed, and it has been since the very beginning. Whether it's the Parkour Literally videos with Le Vietnamium Velon. I think that's his title.
Yeah. OG, man. I haven't heard that guy's name in a while.
I'm just a nerd. I know everything. Throw any name at me and I'll know it, basically.
Okay.
But yeah, and or whether it's who else is fast? Alex Winslow from Sheffield, he was super fast. And then you've got like some of the other French. I've forgotten his name now. One of the French guys, he's really fast. Then you got Joe Hendo, obviously. And I think, I noticed definitely very early in your videos is that you're not taking your time. Like you're flowing, but you're going quickly, and you have a very high average speed, I would say, in your runs and your lines, and that's something that just draws me, because that's what I love. I love seeing that from the very beginning. I've loved seeing that, and so and it's something that I try and do myself as well. I love. I have a love-hate relationship with speed competitions, because I've done a few now, and I've done quite well in a few of them, but man, they just suck. Like this, they're just so like the nerves and waiting. Yeah. And trying to just get this one thing right is quite stressful. But then I also have found, I got to be careful, otherwise I'm going to go off on a huge tangent. But something that I find really interesting about speed competitions is that it's close to the most present I can feel. Like when I'm in this speed competition, I can barely remember what happens. I'm just absolutely focused. And so it kind of branched onto a wider point that I've been discussing with a few people, which shouldn't really be on this podcast, but oh well. It is like the idea of being present. It's a very popular, talked about concept. But for me, if I'm honest with myself, like the times that I've felt most present, I can barely remember, because for example, with the speed, the focus, and the sheer, my body is just going. It's almost like there's no time to process what's going on. You're just being, you're just moving, and I as much as it's a stressful build-up period and like a stressful thing to do. It's a very cool experience. It's so present. You're giving it everything, and there's a real there's something in that. There's something really cool in that. And I'll be curious as to if you feel that when you try your speed comp.
Yeah, I mean, in middle school and high school, I did a lot of team sports and then competed. And I think when I look back, I realized, I don't know why I did that, because I was not competitive at all. I remember. When I was on the swim team, and I was doing breaststroke, I remember swimming in this competition, and I'm swimming, and I realized I'm in the front. I'm the number one, and I started to feel bad for the guy next to me, so I slowed down. And this is a race, right? I slowed down so that we would tie or something. And I was like, I don't have the competitive bone or whatever gene in me. But we'll see. This is different because it's something I've been doing for so long. So
well quite. I mean, I would say I can really relate to that, because when I go to the competitions, for me the perspective change, and I've talked about this I think a little bit in previous podcasts, is like I see competitions now as the arena. It's like, because I've been training 15 years as well, and it's like, what have I got to show? Like what have I've put so much time and energy and emotion and determination into the sport. Like competition, I'm the same as you. I don't really care like where I come or who wins, but it is my chance to draw the sword. Like me and my friends say this, like the idea of drawing the sword. It's the arena where I show who I am. And so it's been really interesting for me having that perspective shift, because I'm not competitive, and that's one thing that really drew me to parkour. And I think a lot of people is this kind of like, oh well, it's about me and the environment. It's not about someone yelling at me or trying to beat someone out of spite or trying to win something, some accolade, you know. So yeah, I can totally relate, man. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, with your own practice, I guess, do you tend to train by yourself a lot, or do you have like a community? Do you train with younger people, or do any coaching? You can see where I'm leading this. I'm leading to, coaching. Like, do you do any coaching yourself?
Yeah. I hate training by myself.
Oh, right.
Well,
I love that.
I hate training parkour by myself, I should say. I train a lot by myself, but that is strength training. That's like me running around the mountains. That's me surfing. So I do a lot of other it's honestly all parkour to me. So I do a lot of training by myself, but not necessarily parkour specific movements by myself. I love training community, and I'm in LA now, so and one of the things that drew me to move here is the parkour community here is really thriving.
Nice.
COVID kind of like bumped up the scene because we were allowed to train outside. I mean, we were allowed to be outside exercising, so parkour was like the one thing everyone could do. So we have some guys here, Jacob Cormier and Nathan Schrader, who have like, they have a schedule. Every Saturday we meet at a designated spot and we train, and we have jams of 15 to 30 people like every weekend.
Cool.
And yeah, that's been my primary time and place that I will train. I also have a friend that goes to the same school that I'm attending right now, and his name is Luke Mizell. So we train locally, maybe like once a week, two if we have time. But yeah, it's all a matter of like how much time we have.
Mm-hmm.
But
so, sorry.
okay, yeah.
No.
I was gonna go into the coaching thing.
Yeah.
As far as coaching, I've been coaching for a while, but like not to the extent of, say, a person who would identify as a parkour coach, I guess you could say. I was coaching alongside, his name is Ozzy Quintero, who is the founder of Hawaii Parkour. He had classes twice a week, so I would coach alongside him. And my first job was coaching at a gymnastics gym, and so I coached gymnastics for the little ones, like 5 through 10 years old. And we had like this, it was called ninja, but it was really parkour, but it wasn't really parkour because it's on soft mats. So it was like parkour-esque stuff that I was teaching. And then I don't know, I've never been one to be like, hey, let me be your, like, I'll teach some lessons and coach. I've always been like, hey, if someone is asking me to coach them, I say, hey, like, the way I learned parkour was free. I learned off the internet and I learned through training with other people. And so if you want to learn from me, the best way to do that is to just train with me. Then you will learn everything I know. And one individual in particular, it's like, oh no, I think I want to I want to have your undivided attention. Like, if I'm training with you, you're also training and you're focusing on your things, but I want to focus. And I was like, okay, you have a fair point. I would much rather just train, but I suppose I can allot some time to coach. And so I do teach, I have taught private lessons. I enjoy a one-on-one. Not coaching currently because I'm in a master's program right now, but that's something that I I think I would enjoy doing more of it at a later time. We'll see. Yeah.
That's good to hear. Always good to hear. I think it's no surprise to my listeners that from the sort of conception of this podcast, it's like that's my mission really. It's to try and bring about more interest in coaching parkour, and as a almost like a future proofing sustainability. Like we need to have people, because there's just a wealth of experience now. I mean, look at us. We've both been training 15 years. Mm-hmm. We've both been through some interesting things, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like we're sitting on this bedrock of information and experience. And I think it always excites me when high level people like yourself say that you're coaching or you're helping people, because you've got so much to give. You've got so much to give. And something that a friend of mine, Flynn Disney, said recently, which I think was a really good point.
I know Flynn, yeah.
Yeah, man, yeah. Flynn was saying how he thinks there's a real lack of workshops in parkour. So, you have your Ed Scotts, your Tim Champions. I was going to say Dylan Baker then, but he's not been around for a while, I guess. I love that guy. But, you have these real talents, and I think there'll be some real utility in offering workshops. Not necessarily, I'm going to be the coach and I'm going to coach kids 10 times a week or whatever, but inviting them to events, inviting them to get to jams, and saying, look, we know that you're really good at this. Can you just give us a few tips? Can you break it down a little bit?
Yeah.
And I guess sure. I agree. I think that if you said, I'm holding a barefoot workshop in LA or something, that's like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like, because people would come and watch, people would come and listen, and they want to know, man. Like, they want to know what's been going through your head and what your practices are. And I would love to, if there are high level people listening, like, have a think about it really, because there's so much value in what we're doing. And admittedly, these things are not always easy to communicate, and it's really interesting that some of the highest level of people I've spoken to, when I've tried to ask them about certain ways they do a movement or the way they practice, they find it really hard to explain. And it's kind of like, I guess maybe they're more in the body rather than like kind of thinking too much. Like, I'm very like cerebral. I'm thinking a lot about concepts and stuff. I think sometimes that takes me away from the moving and the body. And so I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but I would love to see more workshops from high level athletes. Yeah. Speaking along the lines of coaching, like I one of my kind of goals, it's been a thought, is maybe in a year or so release basically a learn parkour but barefoot. And man, on my previous podcast I was actually talking about this as well, and I think I don't think it's for everyone. Like, when people ask me, should I train barefoot, I'm gonna say, what do you think? It's like I definitely don't think it's for everyone, but for those who do choose to train barefoot, I think there are huge benefits. I think there are it's a great way to really take a step deeper into yourself doing parkour. And I haven't, if someone else has created a course doing parkour barefoot, let me know. But so my last parkour student, I started teaching him barefoot. And to me, it makes the most sense. Parkour being a very primal movement focused discipline, and like it, now that I've been training barefoot, it makes sense to me that you would teach it barefoot first. You would teach all the basics barefoot, and then say, okay, you've developed the sensitivity, you know how to land softly, you know that concrete can hurt and injure you, but it can also propel you and move you forward. And so
let's put shoes on. That way you don't have, it's putting shoes on. Like to me now, like when I wear shoes, it's like I have a superpower now. It's like, wow, now I don't need to worry really about how I land. I can just, that's a whole other factor that's taken away. And I'm like, okay, wow, like, yeah, what can a future look like of practitioners who have started parkour barefoot? Because I ultimately think that's a natural progression for human beings. Like babies, children, they're doing a lot of things barefoot, hopefully. And then eventually their parents buy them shoes and they put shoes on, and then they're moving with shoes on. So I think it would be very cool to see practitioners start training barefoot, or at least have that implemented into teaching parkour a lot more, just to develop sensitivity. Training in like Feiyus has always been like preached since the beginning, It's like, oh, yeah, start learning in 0 drop shoes. But I'm like, well, why not you just train barefoot, And yeah, those are my thoughts. So maybe in a year or so I'll release something, but we'll see.
Cool. And a very, very simple question, but something that I imagine listeners are interested in. Training barefoot, is it simply a matter of time and practice which makes it feel more comfortable? And because I've trained barefoot in different periods of my training as well, and I've enjoyed it. I some of the things you've said have echoed with me, definitely. But I definitely haven't nowhere near taken it to the level that you have. But yeah. I'm curious as to, is it as simple as just doing it more? Is that what helps your barefoot practice feel more comfortable? Because obviously it's very uncomfortable to begin with for a lot of different reasons. What do you think?
Yeah. Answer is yes and no.
Yeah, I love it.
That is often my answer, because every person is different, and so what is truth to me may not be a truth to someone else. And I always, I get asked this a lot, how are you able to train barefoot? How are you able to build the resilience to do what you do? And I always say, it's pretty simple. Like, you start off exactly how I say, you progress and you start by walking barefoot, maybe for 5 minutes a day, and then increase that to first 5 minutes on grass, something soft a day, and increase that to 10 minutes, and then start moving from grass to concrete, or grass to dirt, or all these things, and expose yourself to different elements, and then eventually maybe parkour. So yes, it is as simple as that, but environment does play a huge factor. So I'm gonna say that's where the no comes in. I'm sure, like where you live in the UK, it's like there's not too much access to different terrain. I feel like it's mostly concrete or grass or dirt. I think what was crucial to me developing the resilience was my environment. Living in Hawaii, like we have all sorts of terrain, and a lot of it is grass, a lot of it is soil, a lot of it is earth, a lot of it is mud. And so it gave me the building blocks to build up resiliency over a long period of time. Whereas if I had, say, trained in the UK and went and saw my video and was like, oh, I'm going to start doing that, then I think the first session I'm going to have is probably training on concrete, because that's what you guys have. Concrete and brick. I mean, maybe you can go to a park, but there's not really too much of that in between. You maybe have grass and brick. Maybe you live on in Cornwall, and you have access to the beach. But yeah, I think anyone can do it, but of course the environment where you live plays a big factor. Like obviously if you're in London, like if you're walking around barefoot, that is really strange. It's a really strange to see. If I saw someone walking around in London barefoot, I'd be like, oh, this guy's homeless for sure. So, yeah. Yeah.
Something that's been really nice for my my own life recently is joining a Capoeira group. And it's all barefoot, no equipment, just all floor work. I don't know if you've done any Capoeira before, but it's really nice to actually revisit barefoot in a different world and see the proficiency they have is amazing. Really inspiring. And again, it links back to Danny. I think that Danny was a Capoeira student for a while as well. And so yes, you're right. In the UK, not only is it not normal to walk around barefoot, but it can be pretty dangerous. Or I mean, there's needles, man. It's not always the nicest. So I'm hoping that as the weather improves here, and we move into spring and summer, then I'll revisit some barefoot stuff, because there's something, and it's hard to explain, but there is something about it which does feel quite freeing and fun and interesting and challenging, and really challenging, obviously. But right now, it's dark, it's winter, but I'm enjoying it in this little room doing Capoeira. So
Yeah.
it's good, man.
Yeah, it's good. Welcome back.
Yeah, back again.
Yes.
I should
Back from our commercial break.
Yeah. I have to put in the sponsor breaks. But I need a sponsor first.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's one thing I appreciated when I looked at the Instagram and stuff. I was like, oh wow, he's got a good repertoire of people and individuals from all walks of life within parkour. So yeah,
my aim is to try and be as diverse as possible as well. I think that it's because there's so many, especially because there's so many guys in parkour, to just take your pick. So I've been trying my best to get more ladies on as well. I had Amanda on before, which was awesome. It's really nice, from Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah, she was great. So I'm trying to get in contact with quite a few people.
I thought it'd be important to mention to the listeners, after just talking about building resilience in the feet and whatnot, that I think that the assumption that people have of me is that I'm living barefoot all the time, and that I am don't own shoes, don't but I'm spilling the beans. I wear shoes all the time, To me, training barefoot is a tool, and shoes are also a tool. And so the guys that see me train here in LA, it just depends. Sometimes I'm walking to a session barefoot, and I start the session barefoot, but I have my shoes and I put them on because I want to do a challenge with shoes on and not have to worry about scuffing my feet up. Sometimes it's the complete opposite. I go to a session with my shoes and I train, and then I find a challenge that I want to do barefoot and they take them off. So it's not, I think people assume I'm showing up to sessions and I'm training the whole time barefoot. That's the goal for me, but I am not there yet. That's something I am working up to, and yeah, there will be some sessions that I can do fully barefoot. But it's very dependent on what it is I'm trying to do. If you watch my stuff, you will realize there are specific movements that I don't do. Like anything that's any downward pre, I don't really do because that's very hard on the feet. Sticking jumps, very hard on the feet. Almost all my movements are moving up or a descent. When you do a descent, it doesn't matter because you're not landing on the edge of anything. Technique does change a bit when you train barefoot. So if someone wants to try training barefoot, you have to understand that the technique changes. A specific example that I have in mind is we're taught when you land on an edge, you land on the ball of your foot when you're wearing shoes. You only do that when you wear shoes. If you do that barefoot, you will wreck your feet.
Wreck them, of course, in what way?
That's dependent on how big the jump is. But if you're trying to attempt a big jump and you're trying to land on the ball of your foot, then it is pretty likely that you will arch or the impact will be too great. So when you see me doing running prees that are level, I'm trying to land completely at the top. The ball of my foot's on the top of the wall. So my foot is not really coming in contact with the edge. And if you do see me land on an edge, the edges are beveled. Like the only time you'll really see me do a big running pre barefoot leveled is if the ledge is beveled. Because if it has a sharp edge, then it hurts. So just wanted to clarify. My feet aren't invincible. They don't look like bark. Or, I get tons of people asking me to show them the bottom of my feet because they think it's just like made of iron. But no, they're like, I think my feet look like any other person. I think I just really train technique and now have an understanding of what surfaces you can train on barefoot and whatnot, because there are certain surfaces that you can't, and it's definitely been a learning curve. So but that's also what I love about training barefoot. It really, again, it puts you into yourself to a whole nother degree than you would if you were wearing shoes. So yeah.
And am I right in saying that you spit on your feet sometimes in the same way that some people spit on their hands?
I will sometimes rub my feet in something that's moist. It depends on the texture. Where's that spit? Oh, okay. I climbed this tree and I realized that a little bit of moisture would have helped. So I think that one of the captions was, should have spit on my feet or something. I haven't spat on my feet yet, but depending on what surfaces I'm trying to land, I will either rub my feet in dirt or rub my feet in something that is moist, which is something that I guess is very specific to training barefoot, because I don't know if you can call it an adaptation or something, but yeah. Sometimes I'll if I have chalk, I tend to carry chalk with me now, so I'll chalk up my feet. So
cool. Yeah, chalk seems to be a pretty universally what's the word? Like, I think we all realize its benefit. That I don't think there's anyone like, oh no, it's cheating. Like, we're all kind of chalk is great, and it might actually really prevent you from hurting yourself.
Yeah,
No,
it's funny because now things that were kind of taboo back, when we started, are now okay. Like, even before, like, lifting was like, oh, that's cheating. You're lifting. Like, of course you can jump that far. And like, oh, you use chalk. Like, that's cheating. Like, you just use this dirt or this or that. But now it's more commonplace to see those things, and I think that's going to help the sport grow, because now we're going to be able to do things that we wouldn't be able to do if we didn't have the assistance of chalk lifting. And I know now some people, I've done it myself, you pour Coke on rails to clean it off and add a layer of stickiness. So
do you do that with barefoot as well?
I haven't done the Coke thing for barefoot. I haven't had to do that yet, but I mean, not opposed to it. I know, like, Brody Pawson always carries a towel with him. That's something he always has to have, to wipe off his shoes and to clean off his hands and to wipe down surfaces. And I remember like, wow, like, I don't know why no one else is doing this. Why does it seem to be like you're the only one doing it? But it's like, that's genius.
It's always interested me. A word again you mentioned there was this cheating idea. It's so interesting that this thing we do is so open and so explorative, but at the same time we're wary of anything helping us. And I think sometimes that's to our detriment. And I think chalk's invaluable. I think the towel, that's a great idea. I think I think I'm gonna start doing that now. Just bring a towel with me, maybe some Coke or something. It's interesting.
No, go for it.
Sorry, I was going to say it's interesting the other way as well. You see some of the German guys, and they're pouring water on rails to slide on them, to add extra momentum with their slides. Again, so cool, so interesting.
Yeah. I think a really cool thing that I would love to see someone do is create I don't know what you would call it, a parkour aid kit. Kind of like a
essentials kit,
like a first aid kit, but parkour essentials, like a parkour aid kit. Like it'll contain like a little thing of cola, I don't know, and then a little bit of chalk, and it'll have a towel. Just various random things that can help. In a session. And of course, you could have bandages and stuff, because that's another thing. I feel like parkour people should carry first aid kits, at least if it's a big jam or whatnot. That's
It's funny, isn't it? It's so strange that it's quite low down on the priority list.
Yeah.
And yet we get hurt fairly often. I mean, cuts, grazes, bruises, aches and pains. I try to carry one fairly often. I have one in my classes, obviously we have to.
Yeah.
And there was a guy, I'll tell a little story quickly. There was a guy from Leeds who had a really unfortunate accident recently. It wasn't too bad, but I was there with him. We were trying to break this jump along a wall, over some height to a rail. And along the wall was a serrated fence.
Okay.
So it wasn't really sharp, but it was metal, and it was just there. So it meant that when you were running along the wall for your run up to do the jump to the rail, it was very close to your arm. So you kind of so I remember like trying to almost hold my arm up as I was running, which is kind of strange. Anyway, we broke the jump. We were happy about it. He broke it as well. And then he got up again to do it, and he ran, and as he took off, I heard this I heard this noise, like this, this noise, and he still landed the precision, which was awesome.
Yeah.
He still landed the jump, and then got down, and suddenly he just grabbed his hand, and we were like, oh no, what's happened? And he just whipping the hand up, he just...
Yeah, severed his hand completely off.
Thankfully no.
Yeah,
but he kind of... If you're watching this, I'm just pointing to my index finger, like a fairly nice gash across his index finger, and but it was it was one of those things where you're like, shit, we need to do something about this, and suddenly I've got my hand like clamped on his, and we're kind of like putting pressure on, and then I'm kind of like looking at it, like peeking at it, and like, it's probably gonna need stitches, and I think someone had some bandage stuff on, so we used that. But I do think first aid kits should be maybe talked about a little bit more in parkour. But at the same time, I love your idea of the parkour, the PK Essentials Kit. I think that could be such a funny product, like for someone to make as well.
I know Modus released a wipe towel. I think that's the closest thing I've seen to. Someone even coming close to that, but
And something that's very close to my heart, which I think I read on one of your comments, was about your ape index, your arm span. Tell me about that, and this follow up to that is, how much do arm jumps interest you? Because I also have quite a big ape index, and I love arm jumps. Like, I'm just all about them right now, especially with capstone and the whole arm jump craze. I love it. I love it so much. I'm really exploring and trying to push that. So tell me about your arms and how it how it relates to your training.
Yeah, so I have a +5 ape index. I am 5'8". I don't know what that is in centimeters. I'm 5'8", and my arm span is 6'1".
Right.
So +5 inches. I'm not gonna show you, but just trust. You can just believe me.
Yeah, I will.
And yeah, I guess that's my superpower, my secret. I can do some things that other people my height wouldn't be able to do, as far as reach and yeah, just reach. As far as cat leaps go, they're not so much a thing for me now. It's very hard to do cat leaps barefoot. Very hard.
Yeah.
If you do them barefoot, your feet can't slide at all, because if they slide, you're gonna shred all the skin off your feet. So
Yeah.
If you do see me do a cat leap barefoot, it's because there's a layer of dust on the wall, which is creating a layer of slide that will help protect my feet. So which is funny, because those are the walls you avoid when you wear shoes, but those are the walls I will gravitate towards if I'm barefoot.
Nice.
So barefoot changes a lot of things. But it's funny, because when I first started parkour, cat leaps were my thing. In fact, I was like, it's funny, like when I saw caps and all that, I was like, that was me my first 4 or 5 years of training, because for whatever reason I had this running prees were so hard to me. Like it was always scary being in the air and then having to land like just on your feet. And so if you go back and watch a lot of my old videos, like I'm doing a lot of plyos and I'm doing a lot of cat leaps, because for whatever reason taking off one foot scared me. So I would plyo everything. I would run and just plyo. And it's funny, because I would do a lot of the jumps that everyone else was doing. You know, they're doing it running pre, like off one foot, and I would plyo because like I was scared to take off one foot. And cat leaps were like, they felt really comfortable to me, because you're standing 2 feet, you're landing 2 feet, and you have your arms. And I didn't know it then. I didn't know my ape index was really helping me. But in hindsight, like, oh yeah, like just having your hands be so much in front of you just does create, you just have inches more room to land. Like, the danger in doing cat leaps is how close your face is to the wall. So if you have a greater ape index, you can essentially, you're reaching the wall sooner than someone with shorter arms would, and 2, you have more, you have a longer shock absorber. Essentially, you can like take that impact over a longer time. And at some point I was thinking about all the people who were really great at cat leaps. Like I remember even asking Tim, I was like, what's your ape index? Because you have like a massive cat leap, or you're really great at swings. And my assumption is that people who are great at swings and cat leaps have a bigger ape index. And I forget what he told me, but like he had like a plus something ape index. I'm curious to see what Kidori's ape index is, 'cause I'm sure it's a big contributing factor.
Well, I have a sort of theory that, maybe not a theory, but just an idea. I think there's 2 things that can really positively affect your sense of distance perception in parkour. I think one of them is leg power, like leg strength. You know, if you can, because often when I look at arm jumps, it's a question of not the arm jump, it's a question of, can I standing jump that, you know?
Yeah.
And so I see people with really strong lower body musculature being quite confident on arm jumps and these sort of things. So I think there's that, which makes things feel smaller. You know, things suddenly feel smaller if you can jump further, obviously. But I think also the ape index, I think, plays into vision as well, because there's arm jumps that I look at, and I do have long arms as well, and I think that they seem more in the realms of possibility because of that as well.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
so I think that if you're lucky enough to have one of those or match both of them, then I think you do get a kind of arm jumps which might look very scary to other people don't look as scary to you. And it's all about that. It's just that vision, you know, that sort of sense of where it's possible, where it's not possible.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
There's a guy from Coventry called Chris Scott, and he has beastly arm jumps. And he's, sorry, Chris, I don't know how tall you are, but he's a fair bit shorter than me. I'm 6'2".
Okay.
And man, he goes so hard on big arm jumps, and it's crazy. Like his leg power, he's so well built. It's crazy. He's just, you know, any excuse of like, oh, you know, oh well, I'm not tall enough or whatever. Like he just gives it the fucking middle finger, man. He is an absolute unit.
Yeah.
I love seeing that. I love people that just completely squash those ideas.
Yeah. No, it's super funny because I remember like you know, I was really into urban free flow, and there was one release of their magazine that had all these, you know, South Bank regulars, like all these different people, and they had their stats, like their height and stuff. And I was like, these guys are huge. Like they're at least 5'10", if not 6 foot. And when I, you know, went to London for the first time in 2016, and looking at the gaps, I was like, that makes so much sense. Like I feel like the average person, at least back in the day, like just amongst urban free flow members, were at least 5'10". Like I was like, wow, yeah. Like, no wonder they can do these jumps. Like, but since then, yeah, we have a lot of practitioners of varying heights. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna say names because I don't want to offend people, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think it also inspires me seeing the giants do really well. People like Mish. And who else is really tall in parkour? I'm forgetting names at the moment. But,
Brian.
Yeah, Brian Prince, is it?
Yeah, Brian Prince. Yeah, 6'9".
Whoa.
Yeah, 6'9". Yeah.
Wow.
You should.
Cool.
If you haven't had, you should get him on this podcast. He would be a very, very interesting one because he was the Predator. He was the Predator in the
Prey.
One of the recent Predator movies. So, because of his height, he was the only one at that height that could do parkour. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Swell guy.
Yeah. Shout out to my tall brothers out there. There's benefits, but there's also some detriments, you know. And it's just fun. I think it's really fun to think about. So I guess we'll start rounding things up. I would just really like to give you a bit of space now. If you have any shout outs, messages, or any little tips, tricks, whatever, about your own practice or anything that you think is really worth sharing and that you found, yeah, man, it's your space. So is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, I feel like I'm given this opportunity after every podcast I've done, and I always think about it. Things to say. I think just understanding that everyone's journey, whether it be parkour or anything that you do, is unique to yourself. And I think at the end of the day, what I want most for people is just to find a form of expression that is the truest to themselves. You know, I don't care if it's parkour, I don't care if it's basketball, I don't care if it's dancing, but like to truly be able to express the soul, I think that's something that is very needed in this day and age. And I remember one of the questions was being rooted, and I think that's what I mean by that. It's being rooted to who you are as an individual, and it's a very abstract maybe concept to a lot, but I think at least with my journey in doing Barefoot and stuff, like everything I'm doing now feels very it feels like a very good encapsulation of everything that I've experienced in life. As the listeners know, I was born in Hong Kong in the city and moved to Hawaii and moved from, doing very urban things and now moving to trees and now urban and trees. And I feel like everything I'm doing is a perfect encapsulation of that. Like I'm moving barefoot in the city. So there's an essence of nature and the city together. And through that fact, through this journey, it's like I'm finding that it is drawing closer to a very true and earnest and honest expression of myself. And that is the hope that I have for everyone. And yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think we'll end it there. So
Cool.
Listeners, watchers, all the links for Matt will be in the description, whether on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, wherever we are, wherever you're hearing this. Go and check him out. Go and check out what he's doing. I feel very thankful to finally speak with you, and thank you for sharing your words and your practice. And I hope we meet someday. I hope that we can have a barefoot session one day. And thank you for inspiring me, man. I really appreciate what you're doing and your journey. So from me, thank you very much. Thank you for listeners. And Matt, all the best to you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we'll end it there.
Cool.